I'm here with Luis Gazitua from Jag Insurance. Luis, welcome. Thanks for joining. I know it's been a long time in the making. I'm excited to be sitting down with you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you, Jeremy, for the invitation as well. Excited to kind of get into this. Love talking, love connecting with people, love talking business in general.
So why don't we, before we jump in and get a sense of your entrepreneurial journey and a little bit about your business, can you just tell us a little bit about what Jag is and how and when it started?
Sure. So it's Jag is, stands short for Jones, Alvarez, Gazitua, right? It's three partners. There's three of us. We've been working together in the insurance industry for, I think, 17 years. All of us got into it a little bit separately, and I'll kind of get into the story, but we're a privately, independently owned, independent agency based in Coral Gables. Our focus is property and casualty, right, in general. But we're a middle market firm growing, knocking on doors. We're now all in our early 40s, been doing this for 15 years and just having fun growing a business. And that's kind of the short story of it. But
nobody graduates college, starts out their career going, I want to jump in insurance. So
no, I know
why
that.
don't you tell me a little bit about what made you decide to get in the insurance side, let alone with a couple of friends?
Well, it's it's true. I'm always careful about talking about insurance because usually once I say the word insurance, people kind of start to fall asleep or they tend to walk away from me. So
that's what I would tell somebody on an airplane if I didn't want to talk to them. I say I sell insurance.
Exactly.
Usually they'll stop talking to me at that point.
Yeah, if you want to be antisocial, just say you sell insurance, and everybody just kind of walks away. That's my that's exactly what I do at parties if I'm not in a social mood.
That's right.
But interesting enough, my specific journey, my family's in the restaurant business. I mean, I grew up in the restaurant business since 1982. My parents started a chain in South Florida, and I kind of grew up on it. I have a twin brother, and it's interesting enough that I'm actually the only one that doesn't work in the restaurant business. And I went to college, stayed here locally, went to FIU, Florida International University, on a baseball scholarship. My whole dream was to play for the Marlins. That's kind of one of the things you grew up. If you play baseball in South Florida, what time, right? How am I going to get to the big leagues?
Yep.
My journey, getting into it at FIU, I ended up graduating. I made a decision really early on that I wanted to kind of carve out my own path. Nothing against the hospitality industry. It's a really tough business. I mean, I grew up seeing my parents really work their tails off, specifically in the weekends, and the sacrifices they made for me, and some of the things they missed out. So I kind of made a choice early on, a little bit of a line in the sand, and because I think the expectations are on a lot of family-run businesses is that, hey, I'm doing this for you, right? Lining it up for you. So once that kind of ended, I said I wanted to kind of try my own path, and I got into a couple sales jobs. But specifically got into insurance. I had a buddy of mine who was worked at a State Farm office, and I just figured, again, like most people say, getting to insurance, like, why would you do that? I didn't really have a choice. I just know I told my parents I was going to do my own thing, and I found kind of the first job I could find. So became a receptionist. Absolutely hated it. It was not the best experience in the world, but like anything, pride and ego, just kind of grind through certain things. Started learning about insurance, started getting my licenses, so on and so forth. Coincidentally, fast forward a couple of years, this is 2005. I went to FAI is kind of the Florida Association of Independent Agents. It's kind of our union, right, for independent agents, and they have an annual conference in Orlando. And I ended up going with my firm, and that's where this kind of all started, because I went with my firm. Doug Jones, my other partner, went with his father. Fernando Alvarez, my partner now, went with his firm. And it's funny, we got there in 2005, and we were 24 years old, kind of fish out of water at that point. And we were the youngest guys there. We just kind of sat at the bar and looked at each other and said, hey, we should probably do this on our own, right? Like it was interesting at that time in 2005, when you're getting into an industry, there's a huge generational gap, and the entry point in any business is pretty difficult, right? Mentorship is huge. Who's going to mentor you? Who's going to teach you the ropes? We felt that we didn't really have that at the time, so we just kind of all got together, and a month later, we started working together as salespeople.
I grew up in the car business. My father owned car dealerships, worked his way up from selling cars to own car dealerships. And it was the same deal. They expected me to be able to get in the business, and I wanted to carve my own path also. And so you saw the opportunity, more of the difference in age when you were at that conference, where you saw it was a lot of older people already in the industry, and you thought you can carve a path as a younger person that might not be they might not be attracting people into that industry at that time and kind of build your own business?
I mean, that was the kind of the biggest kind of like light bulb went off, right? As far as the moment. And it was
Yeah.
difficult when you're getting into insurance, obviously at that age. I think the biggest obstacle is, you're telling people how to insure, what to do when you've never done it before, right?
Right.
How am I going to tell a business owner, a plumbing manufacturer, right, how to do it when, I just started the business 6 months ago. But seeing that and kind of taking those 2 years, taking the licks, the no's, knocking on doors, and not seeing anybody, almost from a helping, right, from a mentorship standpoint, when I was able to connect with my two friends who we all played sports together at FIU. I mean, we grew up together, we worked out together. It was an instant kind of connection, right? It's almost like nonverbal communication. We looked at each other, we looked around, we saw everybody was kind of, obviously a lot older generation, and we stood out like a sore thumb. So we decided to say, it wasn't very long. It was a couple drinks in, a couple text message conversations to like, let's just do this together. Almost like a rallying point, right? If you're in sales and you're on commission and you're by yourself, it could be it's just difficult. Nobody
It's lonely.
understands
You
that
could be lonely at
type
that
of
point. Yeah.
stress. It's a lonely place, and that type of stress is difficult to articulate to people who aren't in that position.
Yeah.
So we kind of like a band of brothers type approach. We
Well,
started
what I
together.
loved is when you look at your website and you look at some of the videos on your website, you mentioned the word family, and then you talk about athletics and the idea that you guys are all sports fans and all athletes in the time. And you could tell that you've taken that idea of team, that idea of wanting to be able to support each other on the field, if you're in the athletic side, to the
Yeah.
business part. But bringing on partners is always hard. And so people always tell you never do business with your friends, never do business with your family. You've seemed to succeed at it. So as listeners sitting here going, I want to start a business. I think I got a good friend to do it with, and we've been talking about it, or a family member. Can you just talk a little bit about how you three went through that decision making to possibly put your friendship at risk, but also, decide to go into an endeavor like this together? How'd you guys come up with that decision besides hey, there's a good opportunity, but to actually partner together and decide that you're going to go in business together?
Well, first and foremost, I think we have the one thing we do have in common is we have the same vision. I think that was the first thing that stood out, where we wanted to go. And to be honest with you, what pushed us to kind of have those conversations was, there wasn't a plan B, right? A lot of times people think if you start thinking about what to do next, you don't tend to take as much risk, and get as uncomfortable. So at that point, we looked at each other, we said, we're going to do this, let's do it together. And we really checked your egos at the door. I think that's where the sports, that sports angle and or previous experiences really helped us, right? And we all played team sports. I played baseball, so did Fernando. Doug played football. I mean, we didn't play tennis, right, or golf. It was a team type of aspect where if everybody does their job, right, we're going to win together. So that kind of, and not having a plan B and checking your egos at the door was kind of the catalyst. Now, what really did change in our business, and again, you brought up a great point about bringing in partners, working with family. I've seen it firsthand on my family. I think the biggest thing is like who's carrying the weight, right? Everybody kind of makes it. There's always like this feeling of I'm doing more than you, and I should have X. And early on in our business, and just as far as how we get paid in our business, as far as commission and growing your book of business, it took a few years about developing, and looking at how we do it. We all do things different. And I think that's what kind of made this work even more. We took a step back and realized I have my way of doing it. Fernando has his way. Doug has his way. And we decided to kind of say, let's all put it together, right? It's really a mindset of, and I think ego is the biggest thing. And we still fight with it. I mean, everybody has an ego. To be successful in sales or any business, you have to have a big ego. I mean, this isn't for the weak, right? For all the
Yep.
no's. So just but doing that, no plan B, and putting your pride aside, I think has been the two biggest catalysts.
Well, I love a couple of things you said. So when you're starting a business, if you have that plan, I understand starting a side hustle in the beginning where you're, trying to build a business while you have another income coming in. But when you decide to go all into your business, not having a plan B is a real important piece to being successful, because you're going to be constantly, when those hard decisions are made during that day, whether it's putting in the extra hours, it's going through and getting another no after you just got turned down 3 times. if you in the back of your mind, there's another option, you don't make those hard decisions during the day. And I think your point of a plan B is a really good idea that people need to kind of ingrain in their system if they're going to succeed in entrepreneurship, because you're going to have to be able to handle those tough times and make those good decisions. And you can't have another option. What I also like that you
Yeah.
just mentioned about was carrying your own weight. I think I have a partner in one of my businesses, and the partner in that business, I can feel myself when I'm not carrying my weight, the level of guilt that falls on my shoulders, because I know when I could see him hustling harder than me, all of a sudden I need to step up for another couple more weeks because I
Right.
have a side of my part where I'm not feeling it. Now he never says anything, and when he's probably slacking, I don't even notice, or I'm not going to say anything because I know we're going to wash each other out. But I think as a partner to succeed, and this is what I heard you say was you have this responsibility to make sure you are carrying your own weight and that somebody else isn't actually just sitting there doing all the work for you. And you talked about ego with it. And I think you're right with the ego side. And the way I always describe it is you need an ego. An ego helps drive us. An ego helps force us to be able to be better and want to be better and make good decisions today. But that ego needs to be behind you, pushing you. It's when that ego is in front of you and you're portraying it to other people where it's turning people off, or it's
Yep.
you masking some of your own issues, is where it starts hurting you. And I think people look at ego sometimes as a bad thing. And I think you articulated it well to realize that you need an ego there, but it's got to be pushing you and driving you, not out in front of you, pushing other people away. So no, appreciate the feedback on the partner side. Can you talk, the insurance industry is an interesting one. And I always ask this question to anybody in any industry. There's bad advice in every industry. And, you started in the insurance industry and you had people you knew that probably gave you advice right off the bat. You bring in a number of new people into your company and you've seen people succeed or not, and they hear the advice you're giving them, but they also hear advice on the street. What's some bad advice that you hear for people coming in the insurance industry, or even bad advice you might have got early on that
Yep.
that you just want to kind of debunk or demyth?
It's interesting. I think what turned, and this is me just from an awareness standpoint. I'm now I turned 40. I feel like I became enlightened, but I think what I constantly ask is not really focused on successes. Like everyone tends to focus on what they did right, and the truth is you can be lucky, right? I think the value is I'm consistently asking people like what where the mistakes were made, because I think that's where all the growth can come from. So now, when I got into this business, first of all, this whole concept of getting into insurance, hey, go, get into this because 5 or 6 different people, right? Your 10 friends own these kind of companies. You should get into the insurance business. And I tell everybody the opposite. I'm like, if you're going to get into something, don't do it because you know certain people. Those are the people who aren't going to help you. I mean, I'm still chasing friends of mine 20, 15 years later
Right.
in the insurance business, right? This is about how you can, in any business you're going to get into, it's how can you carve your way in, but also build that network up organically. I think the biggest mistake in this business is, hey, write down, your 10 closest friends, go after them. And, again, for me, it's more of, work slower, work backwards, build trust and rapport. Don't be a salesperson. Don't make it seem like it's a job. Show people this is going to be your career, so you can be that trusted advisor. So many times we chase commission, right? We always talk about, are you building or are you chasing, right? There's two different aspects in sales. And I'm a big believer in, if you're gonna do anything, look like where you're gonna build, have that 6 month, 12 month, 3, 4, 5 year plan. It's crucial in any business. Don't just chase anything. And I think that evolution, that mindset it's would be my biggest advice.
Can you expand a little bit more on the building versus chasing, the idea of kind of building your business versus, chasing the business, and what you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, so a lot of it, like, and I'll give you just again personal experiences, is when we look at everything that we do as a company, it's not about closing the month of August or October. It's what are we gonna do the next 5 years, the next 10 years, and having a clear defined vision. So for us, we talk about everything we do is about being one of the largest, if not the largest, right? Independently owned insurance agency in the Southeast United States. What that means, I don't know. I don't have statistics in terms of book of business or premium amount of employees, but everything we do is about building, and we're putting money back into our business. So whenever we look at a decision of what we're going to do, if it's kind of a quick, an easy type whether it's an acquisition or a small event, I consider that chasing. But if it's something that's gonna cost us money that we're putting back into our businesses, that's gonna actually, we think it's gonna help us in 6 years, I'm sorry, 6 months or 12 months, that's what we consider building. So we look at like decisions, and everything we do is, like we just extended our office. Most people are shrinking their offices, right? Our neighbor left, just like, this is a recent example. Our
Yep.
neighbor left, they're downsizing. We still have our flex schedule. We're still working remote. We have empty space here. We're at 56 employees in total, but we have a Monday, Tuesday, or, Monday, Wednesday, Tuesday, Thursday group. But our neighbor left, and we said, let's knock it down. We added 2,500 square feet to our office, not for today, but it was an opportunity to work with the building, get a better lease, expand our footprint for what we envision where we're going to be in the next 2-3 years. So those kind of decisions about long term and where we're going to be is what I think is the difference between chasing and building, and that even comes from prospecting or selling. Sometimes in our business, you have X dates, which are that sales cycle. Sometimes you got to be a little self-aware that you might not be ready to go after that account. Is it a sophisticated account? Do you have everything in order? Is it a correct submission? You might have one shot, and you might have to wait 24 months to really make an impression to secure that account that you'll have for the next 15 years.
No, I think, it's a hard balance, especially as a salesperson, to get the difference between chasing versus building. I talk to people, and I use the words, you have to have a transactional strategy and a transformational strategy. And unfortunately, most salespeople are chasing the next transaction and the next sale. And I get it. You need to pay for something that month. And as a business, you're trying to figure out how to cover payroll, how to cover your expenses, and you might be chasing transactions that month. So I'm not discounting the fact that you need to make sales and drive business in the short term, but I think your building part is a really good focus for people to think about. It's that, in my mind, I go, how are you going to transform the business? How are you going, to your words, build the business in the longer term? And you can't minimize thinking about that to chase the transaction of today.
Right.
And so as you're thinking about building, as you're thinking about transforming, how do you continue to learn? How do you continue to stay on top of the industry so you feel like you're in a good competitive situation, not just in 1, 3, 6 months, but in, to your point, how you become that dominant agency in the Southeast? How do you keep up on your game? How do you stay on top of the industry and the trends?
It's a mindset, and I think that's the benefit of having 3 partners as well. We do have the quote unquote checks and balances, and continuously we're always really competitively trying to push each other of what's the next move, right? That's the good part about having an ego, is I have this idea and pushing it, and we're always trying to explore. I just think, I'm from a paranoia standpoint. Technology is getting it is evolving so quick. When you look back at what's happened in the last 5 years, that I'm always paranoid. If we don't think what's next, we could become obsolete. Yeah, so it's always about what's, look, and I'm in the insurance business. I think we have the best distribution channel ever invented, but there's so many people in the fintech world trying to get into it, because it is an odd distribution channel, right? From a retail agent to a wholesale broker, right? And it's just people, you start to explain to people, how we do it, and they don't make sense. There's like 4 different distribution channels, and everyone's making money. So the question becomes, with technology, are we ripe for disruption? Probably. How's it going to work? So the paranoia of what could happen is kind of what pushes us as far as what could be next. But I think too is getting involved in what you're doing, and we talk and very openly. Like there's plenty of business going around. I don't look at other insurance agents as competitors, right? We're kind of all in this together. So having conversations and really drawing a line with insurance companies, with managing general agents, with other agents. What are they seeing? I'm a big believer, people who have sold their business, I'm always asking for advice. Again, I'm a big believer of, hey, what do you think you did wrong? What would you do again? And taking those meetings and really not just focus. It's just, if you make it about yourself, I think that's where you get, it's always about you and about your firm and we. I think you can get blinded a little bit. But when you have other conversations and you're open about, and in a good way, a very transparent, empathetic way about what other challenges business owners have and your competitors, you start to pick up what they're doing wrong, and you can kind of see certain trends. So it's about being vulnerable too, and not having this thing about it's only about us. But I think you look about, I think every business owner can share their own experiences and learn from each other. So that's kind of how we tend to see what other people are doing and maybe give us a little bit of an edge of what's next.
I think you're 100% accurate. I heard you use the word transparency in some of your marketing, or it might have been even on your website on it. And
Yeah.
it's clear that that level of transparency and authenticity between you and their partners, but also in the community, has allowed you guys to scale and grow fast. I look at I'm a part of YPO, the Young Presidents Organization, and it's one of those groups of business owners where we're transparent with each other on our different issues. But those learnings I get from other business owners helps me figure out how to make better decisions. And I think, your idea of the technology and being worried and paranoid. I think any business owner that succeeds long term has this healthy paranoia that something's going to get screwed up. And if you don't have that healthy paranoia, you're not going to be able to change and adapt. And having partners like you do is an advantage for you guys to be able to bounce ideas off each other. Which makes me go, as you look back in hindsight, whether it's you, the business, your entrepreneurial journey, or maybe a misstep as you kind of look at the companies, what was a favorite failure you had? And I understand when I say failure, everybody's like, well, it's never a failure. It's a learning. I get all that. But the
Yep.
concept of it is where'd you make a big misstep, strategic thing, whether it's personally or business wise, that you look was a great learning for you?
I, I think, the biggest thing my biggest failure, and I'm still getting better at it. And I think this is from a sales perspective, even a business owner, what I've done, and it's hurt me financially, right? It's cost me money, is getting the bad news out of the way. And I say that because a lot of times, and from a personally, right, I'm always trying to help people. You're always trying to do the right thing. You're always trying to come up with a solution. Sometimes there's not a good solution or a better solution. And sometimes not ripping that Band-Aid early on, but I call it living on Hope Island, right? Sometimes I go to
Yeah.
Hope Island and have a huge condo there and a big boat and that's just my mindset. I'm so optimistic of what's going to happen next. And and this is more from the insurance standpoint, right? Just trying to come up with solutions for some of our clients. And not getting the bad news out of the way, but then giving people hope, which I believed 100%. That's where I've failed, and I'm getting a lot better at just being more direct as far as this is get the bad news out of the way would be one of my biggest advices for anybody, any business. Just do it because the longer you wait, not that it's intentional or not, it just looks worse on you, right? Trying to do the right thing, trying to help people. That's where I've gotten in trouble in just personally in my life.
Yeah, I look back and if we go and if you take that same concept to people you're working with, my father was loyal to a fault to people. And I said he wanted the career, he wanted people to succeed more than they wanted to succeed on their own. And it probably hurt him not being able to have the direct conversations with them because
Yeah.
he didn't want to give them the bad news, whether it was they were doing a poor job and they needed to improve, that the career might not be right for him or not. And that probably hurt him long term in a number of different business opportunities and successes that he had and or didn't have. As you look at your business right now, what do you think is the biggest challenge you're seeing, either for yourself or the industry?
I think it's like this is probably going to be common with any industry. COVID's changed a lot, and I don't know if it's changed the way we do business, but I think it's accelerated what was going to happen either way. But I think human capital, right? Like the staff, labor, that's kind of our biggest challenge right now. The workforce has changed. I think everyone's definition of culture has changed. We're big culture. Everyone that's like the biggest buzzword. Got a great culture. Got a great culture. Like what's culture now? It's high, and I think people now are going more to flexibility, right? I think flexibility is a new culture. So for us in our industry, specifically with insurance, it's flexibility, but it's also attracting newer talent into an industry that doesn't have the best reputation in the world. I tell people, and you can work in insurance at so many different levels, and everyone's experiences are going to be different. So it's how do we get new people in? Like what I saw 15 years ago when I was 25 and everybody was in their mid 50s, 60s, kind of leaving the business. Now I'm getting to my 40s, and it's great. I figure I tell my partners all the time, the next 10 years, I think your 40s and 50, 40, your 40s is like prime time, right? Just as far as your experience in a business. Now some of your colleagues are better decision makers. You hope so, right? Hopefully you get a couple of layups in your business than fighting and scratching and clawing. But having, what's the next step? And this goes about the future, right? And what's our next move in the next 5 years? Who's next in line at our firm? Who can help? Who can we help develop? as future leaders, future salespeople. That's kind of what I'm obsessed with and what my biggest fear is. And in this industry, now we're looking more remote, right? Back to how it's changing. We're now competing and we're looking at people across the country. I mean, we've hired employees now in Atlanta, Orlando, Tampa, which we didn't do before. And it's just opening because we really want to not be so, head in the sand of what the next move is, but developing talent. So I'm kind of going around that question, but that's the stuff that kind of I feel is the biggest issue that we're trying to address currently, to avoid issues in the next couple of years.
Yeah, no, I obviously, and it's all in the news on the fact that it's been hard to find good people and hard to be able to figure out the right compensation plans that don't destroy your margins for the people as the war on talent has increased significantly because geography's closed out, right? Like you're hiring people across, which we never thought about before. I would have never hired somebody that wasn't in the state I had an office. I thought they had to come to the office the whole time. So it's
Right.
completely transformed what we've done. I think PwC, PricewaterhouseCooper, came out yesterday and said 40,000 employees, they said them they never have to come back to the office. I mean, that's a large number to decide and a big strategic decision, especially for a company that probably has a large real estate footprint to not have people back. So yeah, I 100% agree, but it's interesting. And I think it's a hard thing. At least I'm 44, so I'm in 40s like you. And it was the other day I woke up and I'm like, I'm not the young guy anymore, and my job is to replace me. And I always keep thinking of myself as the young guy that's still going to keep growing. And I'm realizing I really need to do a better job in the development of people to replace me faster. And I think that's something that as you're out there building and hustling, you're not thinking about it, replacing yourself at all. And it's an interesting feeling when you get there. And then all of a sudden it builds in a whole other part of your business you got to think about, of the development of people to have that epiphany you had sitting at the bar at that conference, but have the epiphany in your office to want to be able to help you run stuff and not
Right.
need that part where they need to go out on their own, but they see the opportunity with you and they want to continue to work with you. Um, what have you seen as a big positive surprise, whether it's from COVID or just the way the business has kind of evolved in the last few months or year for you that you weren't expecting? Is there any, big positive surprises you've seen?
I, from I think quality of life, that balance and kind of some of it's interesting, some of the experiences now that some of our staff and, personally speaking, have been able to do that 10 years ago, they haven't been able to do. They're almost like things you never considered, right? Sometimes the flexibility and the experiences, quality of life, or some of our employees are able to pick up their kids at school, right? And that you could just see that people, it's a it's a balance though, right? But you can see, in my opinion, people are happier. They're working better. They're doing, where before you'd kind of have 9 to 5, and again the balance, right? They're doing things up to 6:30, extra things that they're not expected to do so. But just the fact that as an employer we're being very flexible. We're still in a flex schedule. I don't see us ever going back, right? And just what's happening, but
Right.
the gratitude, the appreciation, the empathy that you want to give as a business owner is coming right back from employee to employer, and that's a great feeling. It's something that you always thought was one-sided, right? The old school mentality of, hey, that you should be grateful to have a job and all that stuff. I think it's flipped, rightfully so, and the empathy is coming both ways. That's what I've been the most surprised about, and the conversations are different. It's just a different, we still have this change in the world, which is stressing people out. But at least as far as a work management, workflow, and conversation with your employees, it has flipped a little bit for the better.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's crazy to think about that you can go somewhere for 2 weeks and still work all week, and you're just working somewhere. You would have felt, even myself, when I travel for a long weekend, I'm still working Wednesday, Thursday, Friday if it's a long weekend, but I'm in a different location. I would have never done that 3 years ago. It's completely changed on it. I think it's increased definitely people's job satisfaction. You talked before about culture, and I'm curious on this. Do you feel like, and I'm struggling trying to decide on this one. It's hard to keep culture in a flex environment. It's made me pivot in my businesses on how I think about driving culture with it. But
Yeah.
I could say that the employees do seem more engaged and happy than they were a couple years ago. And what I don't know is that because they're picking up their kids and they feel like they have a better quality life outside, which makes them more engaged here? or do you feel like you've been able to put some tactics in place that's kept the culture good from a flexible perspective that you think might be worth sharing?
Yeah, I think, and the same, just like you mentioned too, about how to develop that. That was my biggest fear. I could tell you when COVID happened, and we were pretty transparent about what we're gonna do next. Like, there's no, I couldn't Google how to, how to survive a pandemic, right? That wasn't available on Google. But um, being transparent, and I think the flexibility, kind of those buzzwords about culture, we stayed flexible. I think that held the line as far as culture for the company. And what we do internally is we're continuously trying to, you know, do small things as a company. We, even though we have remote workers, we use our social media a lot to try to engage internally. So even though people are working from home, we have a social media team here at the office, and a lot of it is to show off our culture. So that engagement that you see online, at least internally, still makes people that are working from home feel like they're part of what's going on. So it's almost like lifting the hood a little bit. Like we're doing coffee, right? We'll send videos to everybody, because we have like this competition of who makes the best coffee. But just the transparency of it, and I think we're using social media specifically to help make sure everyone's connected. I saw yesterday one of our producers, he just had a baby, young dad, been working from home, going nuts. He finally got a break. I hadn't seen him in 2 months, but I felt like I saw him yesterday, just from us using the social and tagging each other, and obviously through our Zoom calls. But that's kind of been a big thing about staying flexible and giving people options. We try to do things every bi-weekly, have an event, whether some people do feel comfortable going to a happy hour or vice versa. So I think that's kind of been the social, really, of just making people like they're still here in the office even though they're from home.
I love businesses like yourself that have figured it out. I think that we were at an event, we did a dinner. It was like an off-site for our department heads, and one of the department heads, it was the first in-person event they went to, and I didn't realize, because I did a couple acquisitions last year, they've never met anybody because it started right. It was like 3 weeks before COVID, before we closed, and they never met all the people. And it feels like you've known each other. If you do a good job as a business owner, figuring out other ways to keep people engaged. And I think the ideas that you gave around social, different types of events, whether it's virtual or in person, smaller events that are off site, all those things you've had to become more creative with to create the culture. And I think they're all great examples.
I'll
Two
tell you,
more questions for you.
one thing, Jeremy, I wanted to
Go
jump
ahead.
in just because I thought about it, because it's even interesting where we've hired, I mean, we've grown during the pandemic. So there's people we've hired that have never met certain employees. So one thing we did is, and I would recommend any employer to do it, is kind of develop a little bit of a welcome packet for new employees. Whenever they start, we kind of have this, like, it's almost like a treasure map, right? As far as new employees goes, and kind of the goal is when they start is to try to answer all the questions. And usually what the questions are small facts about certain employees. So the goal would be the new employee to kind of either via Slack or walk into someone's office. Like for me, it's, what are my kids' names, right? How many kids does Lewis have? So it kind of gets the new employee to kind of, from an ice breaking perspective, and it forces them to kind of via Slack communicate, introduce themselves to people in different departments. And that kind of has become, it's fun, right? It's kind of like a little bit of an icebreaker, and it forces conversation. So that's one tip I did forget to mention earlier.
I love that idea. I'm absolutely going to steal that. I know Fahad's writing it down right now. I think that's a great idea, especially as you're trying to navigate virtually. And now I have people across all states, like you're saying the same thing you are too. Yeah, that's a great idea. I love that. I love that. All right, two last questions for you. So there's a lot of private equity money out there, a lot of people that have money, don't want to keep it in the market anymore, and they're looking for businesses like yourself to give money to, or to invest in, or be able to roll it up into a roll up version on the PE side. So can you just tell me, and I'm curious, just from a strategic perspective, somebody gave you 10 million bucks infusion in your business, where's the opportunities? Where would you go invest it? Where would you go spend it if you got a $10 million infusion into the business?
And we've had these conversations all the time. So with the way, if I had that tomorrow, I'd invest in talent. I'd invest in people. So many times people are looking to acquire, and again, this is just insurance business specifically, right? I mean, every business is different. But so much in our business is through merger and acquisitions and buying books of business. What we would focus on is buying, talent, right? Specific people, not other people's problems, but those specific talented people, and give them opportunities that we feel they wouldn't have otherwise. I think there's a lot of, unfortunately in our business, as you grow, depending on your structure, you sometimes get tied into certain situations that you can't get out, right? The golden handcuffs. But what we would do is we'd focus on those who are stuck in that situation and invest in that, knowing that in a couple of years it would flip. So that's what I would do. As far as, I think there's so many people that are really talented, that are out there that they kind of want guarantees. Unfortunately, again, it's a catch-22, right? I didn't have any guarantees, which I think is the reason why I'm in the position today. But if you make that decision when you're 25, which sounds like a good idea, but now you're 38 and you're kind of stuck there, you need those guarantees because your life has changed. So that's where we'd invest in that, because I understand why they're in certain situations. And if you need those guarantees to kind of break those handcuffs, we'll give it to you. But that's what I would do.
No, I love that idea. I struggle with it. The finance side of me starts to go, what's my ROI? If I'm going to go invest this money, I know that this much income's coming in from the business that we're buying and my break even is going to be X. But then the other part is I look at these people that maybe they can't bring a book of business, but the level of talent they have, could be able to create something bigger, but it's not as tangible as bringing over a existing revenue source. Is it worth investing in or not? And that is a big struggle. So I love your answer on that, on the talent side, because I think a lot of times is CFOs become more controlling of businesses and financials become more running of businesses. People forget the talent side of the business. So appreciate that. All right, last question for you. What was the most memorable day of your career?
This is going to sound kind of cheesy, and it's changed all the time because I feel like I'm a little more present now. But just the other day, we just promoted one of our employees who's been with us for 5 years. She's now in leadership, and that happened 2 weeks ago. I tell my wife all the time. Talk to Doug, Fernie, and Doug. I mean, just seeing somebody who wasn't in the insurance business that I met at a bank one day that got licensed, and then in 5 years is now making a significant salary, and she's just getting started. Like when those things happen and we see people in-house grow internally, for me, I'm most proud about that. I can talk about other stuff about opening a new office or going on a cool trip with an insurance carrier, but it's not about me. Like having people grow in our firm, that makes me that's for now on. That I need someone. I got to top that because this is somebody who's grown and she's done the right ways, done their own things. I mean, as a father of two young kids, like I'm passionate about that, especially and having a daughter, it almost tugs at me a little bit more, girl dad, but having and building careers where not I know someone's going to be self-sufficient and not rely on anybody else. I'm most proud about that.
That's awesome. Yeah. If I think why I got into leadership, I was an individual producer on my own, working my own clients, and I didn't get quite the satisfaction that I got when I helped an individual that was working with me succeed. When I can get that person that I'm developing to actually win with a client, that was more exciting to me and gave me more of like a thrill and more of a high than it did with me closing a client or a customer on my own. And that's kind of when I realized that leadership really is about development and developing people. And if you really have a passion for leadership, you really have that passion to see and develop other people and make them succeed. And I have a 8-year-old daughter now, and I feel you the same way that as I am developing her young, but then I see the same opportunity to be able to create for people that are earlier on in their career to build a business, build a successful income and life for themselves. That gives me a lot more satisfaction than I could have created on my own, just getting my own clients and customers. So
No, 100%. That's what motivates me now today more than ever. It's seeing that. That's why when we look about even if it's coming up with a hypothetical perpetuation plan, tough word. But who are we gonna develop next? I love playing that game. I love having that conversation. If someone shows they want to do it, then I'm all in. I get more. That's it. Business is transactional. It's about making money, but business is people. Like that's where we're at today. And investing in your people, that's where successful businesses are going to be at. Look at our business. We talk about it, the mistakes going back to developing talent. Every people had to sell their business because there wasn't a perpetuation plan. Like who was next, right? And if I can build this up for other people, that's what this all about. And if it's about me, then we would. If it was about me, think about it. We have three partners. We're like the rock band mentality. This is not supposed to happen. right?
Right.
Bands break up because somebody wants to be on, everybody wants to have their name on the front. Everybody wants to be the superstar. But if it was about me and I've been about me, I would not be here today. It's about everybody else other than me. So that's
So Lewis, if somebody wanted to join Jag, because from the conversation that we've been having today, it's clear that you care about the people. You look at the company as a family, and you want to develop people and people in the insurance industry. You're really building up a business for yourself. You have unlimited income potential to do it.
right.
How would they, if they reach out to you or find you or information on Jag? What's the best way?
Yeah, I mean, our website, or you could just send me an email directly, but if you go to jaginsgroup.com, I mean, we have a career section on there. You can apply for a job, or even if you want to reach out, my email's on there. It's Luis Gazitua. You can look at from the partner standpoint. I'm passionate about, look, insurance is one thing, but I'm more passionate about helping people. Like if you think you have a job, I want to help you get a career, right? That's a big difference. And I'm passionate about that. So if you feel like you're stuck, we talk about like, and I dealt with this my first job, right? Like when I was a receptionist, is if you're just trying to make it to lunch to get through the day, right? Halftime, like give me a call. I'd love to give you and it might not be with me, but it might just be insurance in general. I'll give you my advice, but I'm more passionate about that than anything else. So you can go to our website, send me an email, call my direct line. I love talking about why I think this is the best career that exists. It's the best kept secret. Like, it's not even a secret, but just people don't think insurance is for whatever reason quite sexy enough. But I can convince you otherwise.
Lewis, it's been an awesome conversation. Congrats for you and your partners on your success. And looking forward to continuing conversations. Hopefully, one of the things I actually missed, as you said it, not visiting my Gables office in a long time, is the coffee. There is nothing good about coffee up here in Fort Lauderdale. So when I'm down there, let's go grab a cup of coffee on our own.
Absolutely. I'll put up our coffee against anybody else. You can come to the office and I'll show you. We'll do a little coffee challenge.
That sounds like a blast. All right, my friend, I appreciate it.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate you.
Thank you for watching the Upreneur podcast, and don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe, and share this with anybody who you think needs to hear it.